Welcome back to another segment here on GEMS Podcast. With me today is a special guest by the name of Gabrielle, who prefers to go by Gabby Roux. And you already know me, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp. But let me tell you a little bit more about my guest because you are in for a treat. So Gabby is the founder of Holistic Philosophy and a certified nutritional practitioner who's passionate about helping women naturally reverse hormonal imbalances such as PCOS, PMS, and irregular periods. She is also an extroverted introvert, a coffee addict, and a dog lover. After dealing with hormonal issues herself for almost half of her life and continuously experiencing no relief from the medical system, she decided to take her health into her own hands and was able to achieve amazing results using holistic nutrition. It is now her mission to not let a single woman quietly suffer for years like she did. She was able to help herself and many other women who thought they exhausted all avenues. Her goal is to be the last practitioner you'll ever have to see. And today we're going to be focusing on women's health as the main pillar, but we're going to dive into hormonal balances, learn about PCOS as well as PMS and PMDD, as well as some other questions that may arise. So you are in for a treat, and let's welcome the woman behind it all, Gabby Roux.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on, Genesis.
My pleasure, Gabby. And before we dive into your passion areas and your subject matter expertise, I want to give my audience a chance to connect with you in a fun and personal way. And there are two options you can choose from. We can do an icebreaker or a rapid fire 10-question game. What are you in the mood for?
Let's do the rapid fire.
Okie dokie. We're playing rapid fire with Gabby and Genesis. Do. Question number 1. What is your favorite color?
Black.
Question 2. I already know that you're a coffee addict. So do you have a particular coffee bean you like?
Yes, I love dark roast. And in Canada, we have a brand called Kicking Horse. They're fair trade, organic, and it's just my favorite coffee that we have over here.
Question 3. Have you always lived in Canada?
Yes, different provinces, but always Canada.
What part of Canada do you reside in currently?
Currently I'm in Alberta, but if you can't tell by my accent, I'm French Canadian from Quebec origin.
Amazing. So I have family in Toronto, and I think it's Brampton or Brompton. I always say it wrong.
Brampton. Yeah, I used to live in Toronto too.
Question 4. Are you a dream car, dream home, or both wanter?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna say both. Why not have it all, right?
Yes, just like me. Question 5. What is your favorite food?
My favorite, I love all foods, so that's a really, really, really tough question. If I were to pick like one food to have for the rest of my life, it would probably be pasta in all of its forms. And I know it's bad to say as a nutritionist, but pasta is life. I said it.
Question 6. What is your happy place?
One specific corner of my couch with a book and a tea.
Okay. Question 7. If you could hop in the time machine and give young Gabby a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't overthink it. Everything has a way of solving itself.
Question 8. If you could have lunch or dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be?
Jim Carrey, 100%. 100% Jim Carrey.
Question 9. If you could be a fly on the wall, Gabby, and listen into any conversation, what conversation are you listening into?
That's a really hard one. Um, I really don't know. I really, really don't know. There's so many to pick from. I'm gonna say because in Canada, probably be on the fly on the wall in Justin Trudeau's office to see what the frig he's thinking.
And question 10. This is our pass or play question. And here are the rules. If you pass, our roles are reversed and you get to ask me a question. If you choose to play, I ask one last question to wrap up rapid fire. So do you want to pass or play?
Let's play.
Okie dokie. If you could go anywhere in the world and money was no option, and here's the kicker, you just found out that they're not flying back to Canada for some time because the pilots have now went on strike. Where are you headed?
Probably either Bora Bora or Seychelles.
Ooh, yes. Okay, so Seychelles has came up a lot because I've been binge watching this show on Netflix. It's called Final Table, where
Okay.
where they're going around the world and they have to cook different dishes from each part. So when I left off, we were on the US and it was still playing because my mom is here, so she was watching it with me. And I've literally got my mom and my husband on this show too because it's so good.
Yeah, I think I've actually watched a few episodes of it. It is interesting. I like anything that has to do with like cooking and stuff. So yeah.
Amazing. And they talked about Seychelles, and I was like, oh, that place looks so beautiful. And
Right.
then Turks and Caicos. So those are on my list of places to visit. So thank you for bringing that into reminder.
Anytime.
And thanks for playing Rapid Fire with Genesis. So let's segue into your sauce, your expertise. So, in order to know like how you got to where you are, you mentioned in your bio that you suffered with hormonal imbalances and just not really finding the support from different physicians, which led you down the holistic route. And there are so many women who are in the same shoes as you and they're just so tired of Western medicine. Like they're trying. And for someone who is trying to conceive and they can't conceive, I think that's when introducing holistic remedies and natural modalities is key because Western medicine is not the final answer. And if we get back to primitive days and living, then our body is so powerful, it could actually heal ourselves. So, walk us through what it was like to begin your holistic journey and what are some of the things that you practice to really help with that hormonal imbalance?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a journey and a half, and I'm still on it. It's definitely significantly better than it was. But when it comes to natural alternatives and natural modalities, it's not like a one pill with will fix it all. It usually takes as long to fix something naturally as it took for you to get there in the first place. So in some instances, it can unfortunately take years. For me, it was really when I was in my early 20s and like I was on the pill. I started the pill when I was 19 because my period was all over the place. I would skip months at a time. I was literally at the pharmacy every other month buying a pregnancy test because I was like, what's happening to me? And then I went on the pill when I was 19, and then I started getting all of these side effects from the pill. So like the water retention and the migraines and low sex drive, like anything that you can think of, I had it. I would also get a ton of spotting in between periods, which was a huge pain. And I had to switch pill a whole bunch of time. And the thing is that my doctor at the time, who was a quote unquote women's health specialist, never tested my hormones ever, not once. She just did like a run of the mill blood test just to check my iron levels and calcium levels and just the usual stuff, but never once for hormones. And I started to get so sick of it. I was getting these symptoms. I was like, there's gotta be something better. Like, why is it that my body can't just be balanced and do its thing without a synthetic pill that I have to take every single month? So that's when I always had an interest for nutrition, and I was always doing research on my own, but that's when I started taking a deep dive. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to go to school for this. I'm going to learn everything I can about it. And once I'm educated, I'm going to help everybody deal with their things too. So I almost went to university for dietetics, and I got accepted. I was all set to go to university, and I decided against it at the last minute because, and not to knock any dietitians, they're super smart ladies, they're amazing people. But for me, dietetics is so close to medicine in the sense that it only looks at one aspect of health, right? Which is your nutrition, your caloric intake, your macronutrient intake, and so on. And I discovered holistic nutrition, which looks at the whole person, right? So it looks at what you're eating, it looks at what you're thinking, it looks at what you're doing, it looks at like the whole picture, and aims to address the root cause of your symptoms, not to slap a band-aid on your symptoms and call it a day. So I went to school for holistic nutrition, did it in 2 years. And right out of school, I didn't start my practice right away. I worked in the natural health industry for different supplement companies. And I worked at health food stores, and I was helping people that way. But I really decided that, you know, in order to really do what I wanted to do and really help women out there, I had to start my own business and get my name out there and, you know, tell people what I do, basically.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought up the point on, the dietetics and dietitians, because they do look at one component of it, but not everything. And whenever we're going through something, it's so important for us to get down to the granular level and really look at the root cause to see what is the underlying causes, what are some of the symptoms, because some of the things could be childhood trauma, some of it could be eating habits, not sleeping, it could be environmental factors, and etc. And then the approach that you're doing is the holistic approach. So you're evaluating everything, and you're really going to pinpoint those issues. So you're not just putting a band-aid on it and just saying, okay, let's move on. Because if you just put a band-aid and say let's move on, what happens when that problem persists again or presents itself in a
Yeah.
more gruesome way? So I like the fact that you're doing that. And I also respect the fact that you mentioned that this may not just happen like that. It may be a slow build to get you the help that you need, but with the right support, the right supplementations, nutrition, exercise, and etc., we can get you there. But it also requires that individual putting in work as well.
It is, yeah, it is work. It's not easy, but if you do put in the time, if you do put in the work and the effort, you will get far better results than you would get from just, you know, popping a medication. But yeah, it is hard, and I really commend all of my clients for embarking on their health journey, because these women are amazing. Like, they put in so much work.
The one thing that was shocking, though, when you were sharing your background story, was the fact that this woman physician did not even test your hormones. So I wonder how many women are out there who have never gone through a hormonal testing to see, okay, are your hormone levels in balance or are they out of balance? And is that something that we need to educate more physicians to do, so women could have a more holistic screening if they choose, or whenever they switch from like the traditional physician to like maybe a naturopathic or homeopathic doctor or practice? What's the difference between testing when they come to your practice, Gabby?
Yeah, so I don't conduct any testing in my practice. I'm not qualified to do so, but I do work with naturopathic doctor as a team, because naturopaths don't like to do the nutritional aspect of things, but they can do my testing for me. So when it comes to naturopath, the gold standard as far as hormonal testing is called the Dutch test. That's a dry urine test where they will basically look at your complete hormone panel. And I'm not going to get super, super deep into it because that specific test is not my area of expertise. But essentially, they'll look at all of your sex hormones. They'll look at your stress hormones. They'll look, depending on the test, they may look at some more hormones like your thyroid, for example. But they also look how they are being processed in the body. So they'll look at where in your liver that hormone is being processed and eliminated, because that does make a difference as far as hormonal imbalances. So they take a really deep dive into it. Whereas with a typical blood test that you would get with a doctor, they will look at some thyroid numbers. Usually they'll look at thyroid stimulating hormones, and I believe they'll only look at T4, but it's really important for them to look at T3 and reverse T3 as well. And most doctors won't do that. When they look at estrogen, they're not really going to look at which type of estrogen specifically and how it's getting eliminated and if it's getting eliminated properly. And they don't test progesterone through your blood, because you can't do that. And like the most efficient way for it is a saliva test, and most doctors won't do it either. In Canada anyways, because our healthcare system is free, they tend to be really reluctant to give away tests, right? So it's it might be a little bit different in the States. But what I came up with, and is it okay if I plug something in here?
Yeah, you can.
So I actually have a hormone quiz that I give away as a freebie, and it's basically just a list of a variety of symptoms that you can check off, and it can give you sort of a general idea of where your hormonal imbalances may be. And along with that hormone quiz, I provide a testing guide. So it's basically a tool that you can bring to your doctor's office and say, I want these specific tests, give them to me. So it's a way to educate women and empower women, and, you know, have them be able to be specific about what they want, because a lot of people will go to the doctor and just trust that their doctor knows best.
Mm. And that's really cool that you're doing that quiz and you're giving that away, because I think it's a lot of value being added there, because then it gives the woman who's going to the doctor, like you said, that empowerment, but then they're also advocating for their care and the level of care that they want to have. So thank you so much. And I know that you sent me that, so I'll definitely have it in the show notes as well. So let's talk about, do you want to hit on PCOS next or PMS? Because they're both different, but PCOS, I know a little bit about it, but it's polycystic ovarian syndrome, right?
That's right. Yep.
And I know that some women who have PCOS, the symptoms can show up in various ways, and that could prevent a woman from conceiving. And then they could also be presented with that irregular periods. Some people have irregular periods, or they have heavier flows, or etc. But since you have more knowledge and experience, do you want to hit on PCOS briefly, and then we could dive into PMS?
Yeah, so I mean, with PCOS, just to keep it brief, the list of symptoms is the length of my arm, right? Like you said, it can present itself in so many different ways, and so many women can experience different symptoms. The three main criteria when it comes to being diagnosed with PCOS are missing periods. So if your cycle is longer than 35 days, that's one criteria. Second is determined through a blood test if you have high levels of androgen, and those are male sex hormones like testosterone. And side note on that, this is basically what would be causing excessive hair growth and male pattern baldness in women who have PCOS, which is a very common symptom, as well as acne, because acne is usually testosterone driven. And then the third criteria is done through an ultrasound. So the doctor will take a look at your ovaries and see if you have cysts on them. The kicker here, though, is that you have to have, I believe it's a minimum of 12 cysts on an ovary to be diagnosed with PCOS. Women who don't have PCOS can still have cysts on their ovaries. And so you have to have a minimum of 12. If you meet 2 of the 3 criteria, whether it's the cyst and the missing period, or whether it's the high level of androgens and the cyst, you will likely receive a PCOS diagnosis. The other main thing when it comes to PCOS is that most women who deal with that condition have blood sugar imbalances and more often than not, insulin resistance. So one of the big way that I help address PCOS with my clients is first and foremost to balance the blood sugar. So I put them on a meal plan that is very low on the glycemic index. Glycemic index, for people who don't know here, is basically how a certain food is going to affect your blood sugar, right? There's some foods that are going to spike your blood sugar, and as a result, your body will release more insulin. And there's some foods that will very slightly spike it, so less insulin is produced, right? When it comes to blood sugar, if you're constantly spiking it, you tend to crash, and then you crave more sugar, and then you go back up, and it's like a roller coaster. And the more you spike your blood sugar, the more insulin you'll release, and the higher your chances of becoming insulin resistant are. Now, I could get into this at length, but we'll keep it short and concise for PCOS. It is a huge cause of infertility because an egg is essentially not being released when you have PCOS, and this is what is causing the quote unquote cysts. They're basically not your regular type of cysts. They're basically just unreleased eggs, right? Like it's basically just follicles that formed on your ovaries and they just never release an egg. And that's what forms the cyst. So that's what's causing the fertility issues there. Yeah, that's about everything I want to say about that. Do you have any follow-up questions about PCOS or?
So it is very interesting with PCOS because I recently learned about this last year via another guest that I had on the show. And it was interesting that sometimes whenever you're going to your OBGYN and your female doctor, they don't always test for PCOS unless something were to look alarming. But I wish there was information where we could give like a woman like kind of like a quick handbook, like, okay, this is what you take to your OBGYN. These are some of the questions you ask, just so you could get ahead of the curve and use those proactive and preventative measures before you're like later on down the line and you find out that you have something that could have very well been mitigated with the proper testing or just opening the dialogue to have a transparent conversation. Because here in the States, depending on insurance, sometimes insurance doesn't always cover certain things. So, the physicians, they want to get paid. So they're not always going to go the extra mile to do the testing because they know the insurance will not cover it.
And the thing with the healthcare system, and I think it's probably the same in Canada and the US, is that they are not in the business of preventing illness. They're in the business of curing illnesses. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a business. So I have a funny side story. Actually, I was talking to a woman yesterday, and she was probably in her mid 40s, I would say. And she was telling me about how she just randomly broke her ankle. She just rolled her ankle and it just randomly broke, right? And she went to the doctor, and the doctor didn't even want to do an x-ray. She was like, it's not broken, it's fine, you're fine, whatever. And then she ended up talking to her sister, who's a nurse. Her sister said, no, it's broken, go back to the doctor, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, the lady said to a doctor, she said, my ankle shouldn't be breaking this easily. Like I didn't do anything to it and it just broke. Can you give me a bone density scan? Can you test me for osteoporosis? Because I'm concerned about that. And the doctor said, no, you're fine. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you, right? And she was like, no, like, I want that test. She actually got into a screaming match with the doctor. The doctor ended up testing her, and turns out that she had osteopenia, which is what you get before you get osteoporosis. The doctor said to her, I won't do anything until you have osteoporosis.
Wow. So then I wonder if we could just categorize that as negligence, because I'm coming to you, you're supposed to be my physician, and we're supposed to work it out as a partnership. And I am a big advocate, since having lost my dad to medical negligence, that if you and that doctor do not see eye to eye, then it is time for you to check out and find another physician that does listen to you.
Yeah, no, and I apologize for the dog barking. Someone's at the door. I personally haven't really found a physician that was completely willing to listen. And at the end of the day, it's not entirely their fault, because they are stretched so thin as far as what their resources are. In Canada, with the free healthcare system, there's so little doctors for so many patients that they just can't spend the time really looking deeply into the symptoms. I've had doctors literally speak to me for maybe 10 minutes before. And when I was going through all of my hormonal issues and like really bad PMS and just other types of problems, after speaking with me for 10 minutes, they wanted to put me back on the pill and Prozac after speaking with me for 10 minutes without offering me any other alternatives.
Wow. And that's a shame to hear that, because so many doctors are so quick to push pharmaceutical drugs versus like really just understanding, is there an alternative route? So that's why I really commend what you're doing in the space. And now let's kind of highlight PMS and PMDD. I have no idea what PMDD is, so you'll have to help me out with that acronym. Yeah. And just I know PMS is like the premenstrual symptoms, or is it premenopause symptoms, or what's the actual definition of the PMS?
Yeah, so PMS is premenstrual syndrome.
Oh, syndrome. Okay.
Yeah, premenstrual syndrome. And I'd like to say, okay, so PMS is very common, but I would like to say that when something is common, it does not mean that it's normal. Okay, I'm going to say that again. When something is common, it doesn't mean that it's normal. When it comes to PMS, the majority of women will experience some symptoms a couple days leading to their period. So it's usually a little bit more anxious, food cravings, water retention, a little bit more tired, a little bit more depressed, a little bit more moody. So those are the typical symptoms that you would get. And after a couple of days, once you start menstruating, it tends to go away. With PMDD, picture PMS on steroids, okay? PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So picture PMS, but make the symptoms about 100 times worse, and it starts 2 weeks before your period. So for half of the month, every single month, you feel like a human dumpster fire. And there's no scientific way to say it. It's a dumpster fire. I've been through it. And for any woman out there who is experiencing PMDD, I'm so sorry. I know how incredibly tough it is. And there's not a lot of research done about it. The theory is that it's basically just an abnormal reaction to the hormonal fluctuation that happens in the second phase of your cycle, so your luteal phase before you get your period. And really, the only solutions that doctors have is to put women on Prozac.
Wow, you can't believe. Yeah. I can't believe that is the only solution that physicians have. With modern technology, natural modalities and so many things is Prozac. That cannot be the
Oh,
end all be all.
that's not the worst of it, though. Another solution that some doctors will actually provide is a full hysterectomy if you don't intend on having children, or if you're done having your children. So if something's broken, just remove it, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah. It makes my blood boil, and I talking about it I almost get tears in my eyes, because the amount of women out there that have had to go through this, just oh, it just makes me really sad. There are some um, medical practitioners out there that will try cognitive behavioral therapy before they go the pharmaceutical route, which I commend. I think that it's great that some are at least willing to explore other options. Um, but for me, what really, really worked for PMDD is a combination of certain supplements, um, changing some of my eating habits, so really balancing my blood sugar and making sure I was getting plenty of sleep and plenty of self-care, especially during that luteal phase. So it's a combination of things. The best supplement out there that I found is saffron. So saffron extract, it's essentially the natural alternative to Prozac, and it just makes you feel very positive. Now, when I'm mentioning supplements, I just want everybody to make sure that you talk to your pharmacist if you're on any medication or if you have any medical condition before you start on any supplements, because it's not one size fits all for this. But for me, that's what really, really worked well.
Amazing. And thank you so much, Gabby, for just sharing your plethora of knowledge. And I know we can't go into more because we've reached our time commitment and we're about to wind down. But I definitely would like to extend an invitation to have you back for a part 2. So let's jump into the call to action. What is your call to action for the audience today regarding PMS, PMDD, or hormonal imbalances, or just really listening to your body and doing your due diligence?
Yeah, so ladies, or anybody who's listening, really, you're not alone. There are solutions, and I want to help you. I can help you. Feel free to reach out to me, even if it's just for a chat. I'm here to listen. Um, and I have seen women getting results. I have seen women start feeling better. Um, you're not stuck with this for life.
Amazing. And how can they reach out to you via your website? And where do you primarily hang out on social media?
Yeah, I have a website, but I'm primarily on Instagram. So it's holistic.philosophy. You can follow me on there. You can send me DMs. I will answer you, I promise. And I always post a ton of content on anything holistic health related, women's health, and hormone health.
Thank you so much, Gabby. And audience, all of Gabby's contact information will be in the show notes, along with that free quiz that she mentioned early on. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We're on 40 plus platforms. You could also see the video to this recording on our YouTube channel by going to @GEMS, GEMS, with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And lastly, but not least, I want to thank each one of you for continuing to support the guests that I bring on, as well as the mission, which is to bring content that is educational, inspirational, and motivational, while also connecting the dots for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And because of you, we're now ranked in the top 2% globally out of 2.8 million podcasts per www.listennotes.com. So if you want to be a brand sponsor, we welcome you into the community. Spaces are limited, but you can find more info by going to genesisamarskamp.net and clicking on the podcast tab. Until the next segment, next episode, or next guest, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing day and take time to listen to your body, Find a physician that listens to you. Don't be afraid to tap into natural remedies and modalities. And remember, your body is your temple. You only have one. So take care of it just like you take care of your cars, your plants, and other things you love.